Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Friends of Fibro. I hope you're well, and if you're a fellow fibromite, I hope you're having a flare-free day. If you are on a flare and are in need of a motivational pickup, this is the guest for you. Before, during, and now after the recording of this episode, I've been inspired and excited to connect with Amadew Coral, and I'm confident that you will be too. If you like what you see, please feel free to like, comment and share. To stay posted on the next part of Amadew's feature, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, thanks. I'm really good.
Good.
So excited to meet you.
I know. I'm excited too.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is awesome.
No, thank you.
And especially for getting up early, like before you go to how many jobs?
4.
I can't even claim to have one right now. What do you do?
So I'm a part-time receptionist at 2 different healthcare clinics. One's a chiropractic and massage clinic, and then the other's a naturopath office. So I have, those are my 2 reception jobs. I also work part-time at Sport Check, which is like a sporting goods store, retail. I've had that job since, I've been working with that company on and off since like 2011. And so it's just a really easy part-time gig. The discount's amazing, especially because I lift, right? So like I get like my sporting stuff like really cheap. Nice. Like usually close to like half off, if not more.
Yeah.
And then I run an online business as well.
So the online business is your hair stuff, right?
Yeah, that's my hair and skincare. That I just kind of like, one of my good friends that I actually met through Sport Check started doing it and started using them and selling the products. And I just kind of was like, you know what, why not? Right? Like I've kind of like never really spent a lot of money on like my own self-care. And like taking care of myself. So I was like, why not? So I started using the products, and like within the 3rd wash of my hair, I was like, I'm sold. I'm done. I love it.
Amazing.
And then there's the opportunity for me to make some money off of it too, right? So why not? And now I'm just kind of like, the whole idea is to hopefully grow that to be big enough so I don't have to work this many jobs, so I can stay home.
Yes, that's the dream, right? That is the dream.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very conscious that my hair is not at its best today. Like seeing the stuff that you advertise and stuff you sell, I'm like, oh no, like today is not the day to have a bad hair day, but it's happening. Your hair looks incredible.
Oh, thank you. The lighting's like not awesome in here just because it's like, oh, it's snowing for the first time. First snowfall. Just looked up when I was like, oh, it's really rainy. Sun's not quite up yet. Looked out the window. No, it's snowing.
That's amazing. 18th of October and it's already snowing.
Welcome to Canada.
That's it now for you, isn't it? It's just that it's just going to be snow till February, right?
Where I live kind of like in a valley. And so we get more rain than we do lots of snow down where I am. We do have lots of mountains in the area that like ski resorts, right? That because they're higher elevations, like they're up, they get tons of snow, and like, like we're like really well known for our ski resorts and stuff. So
lush. So do you ski?
I snowboard.
Lush. Is it like, Is there anything you don't do?
I mean, like, to be fair though, like I didn't know I was sick until last year, right? Like I didn't know that I didn't get my fibro diagnosis until November of 2019. Okay. And I didn't realize endometriosis was a chronic autoimmune health condition until last year either. I was like, oh yeah, I have endo. I didn't know that. I was like,
okay, so I just it's a label, it's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just kind of like assumed that like the daily, like the pains, like the sore and tired that I feel every day, and like the fatigue and like the body aches, I thought that was the sore and tired that you hear so many adults talk about. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh yeah, like same. And then I had an amazing GP, like general practitioner last year. She's a nurse prac, so like not a medical doctor, but like she went and became a registered nurse first and then went on to do further schooling to be able to like do her own diagnosis and prescribing and like that kind of thing. She was amazing. And she sat down and she was like, Amadew, this isn't normal. Like what you're going through isn't normal and you're not crazy. Like you realize you're the first person that's ever told me that.
And you're sat there like, are you sure?
She was the one that brought it to my attention that it's not normal to be in pain every day. Mm-hmm. I was like, really? That blew my mind when I found that out last year. But
so, well, yeah, take me back then. Walk me through it. How did you get there? How did you get to the diagnosis? When did everyone's story is so different. So I want to hear about yours.
Okay. So 2019. So I guess the whole story kind of starts with endometriosis and the fact that I knew that I had endo, and I could tell that my endo was progressing because I was starting to get a symptom that was a pretty significant symptom that I didn't actually realize the gravity of the symptom until I started to do some research. And sorry for anybody that like this is kind of like it's a little bit TMI, but
that's cool. That's what we like. Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Anybody with a like weak stomach, I'm so sorry.
Now's not the time to be having your dinner. It's fine.
Okay. But I started to notice that I was getting cyclic rectal bleeding. So during my menstrual cycle, I would also be bleeding out of my rectum. So not only vaginal bleeding, but rectal. And so then I was just kind of like, okay, like, and I looked into it and I was like, yes, it is a symptom of endometriosis. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I, again, didn't think much of it because up to this point, my doctors with my endo have been pretty unhelpful, right? They're like, here's some birth control. See it, like, right? And then that's about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just a Band-Aid. That's not actually helping me. As soon as I come off the birth control, I'm in agony again. So are we really fixing the problem? And so anyways, I was getting that and I noticed that, but then in February, I had a menstrual cycle and it had normalized. Like I had stopped bleeding both vaginally and rectal. And then for about a week. And then it was like, there was a weekend where I had 4 very bloody bowel movements, like bloody diarrhea, basically. Mm-hmm. And I was but I felt fine otherwise. My abdomen was a little bit tender. It was a little sore, but it wasn't like I wasn't in excruciating pain. And I felt like I could still function. It's not like I'm sitting there feeling completely unwell. So I was like, do I need to go to the hospital? Do I need or are they just going to send me away being like, yeah, they're like, just go see your GP. Mm. Right. So I'm also living in a very isolated community at the time, which was Galliano Island. And so it has a population of, I think, 1,000 to 1,200 people year round. And It's on an island. We have 1 gas station. We don't have a bank. So we only have 3 ATMs. And so very, very small. Our medical resources is we have a medical center, which is basically an emergency triage center, but we don't have a hospital. So for me to go to the hospital, it would mean that I would have to get on a boat to go to the nearest bigger city to get to the hospital. So it was a trek for me to make that decision. If I was living in the city, I probably would have just gone to just be like, can we just rule out that I need medical attention? Instead of me sitting here guessing. But I ended up calling the on-call doctor. And I told them, I was like, okay, well, this happened yesterday because it was the next day now. I was like, this happened yesterday. I haven't had any bowel movements today, partially for fear of it being bloody. I was like, my abdomen's not rigid. It's not in a lot of pain. It's a little tender. It's kind of sore. It feels a little raw, which kind of makes sense. I was like, but nothing overly concerning. And he was like, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go get it looked at. I was like, okay. So I kind of made the decision. I was like, okay, if I have another bloody bowel movement, I'm going. The next morning, I kind of made the decision I was going to go anyways, because I was like, hey, like, I think just for my peace of mind, I just want to go get this looked at. I kind of made the decision that I was going to make the trek into Victoria. And I, of course, I woke up and had a bloody bowel movement right before I left the house. So I was like, perfect.
Like, good, there's the affirmation I needed. I'm making the right choice.
That I need to go, exactly. So I went, they didn't find anything wrong. They thought, one of the nurses was like, are you sure it's not your urine? Because I think they saw my blood work and my blood work wasn't showing that anything was like overly concerning. Which like, if there was like a major like bowel rupture or like bowel bleed, you would see it in like the blood work, right? And so the nurse came up to me. I was like, are you sure it's not urine? I was like, I know this is really weird, but like, I took a picture of it. Do you want me to show you? And she was like, yeah. So I showed it to her and she goes, okay, yeah, I still want to get a urine sample just to make sure, but you're right. Like, I think you're right. And I was like, okay, thank you. And then the doctor went in. I guess they were assuming, like, they were thinking hemorrhoids. And so it does a nice finger up the butt for me. And he goes, okay, yeah, definitely. He's like, it's bright red, but it's not hemorrhoids. So get in to see your GP for a scope. It's like, okay, great. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen. So I go back and I go to my GP and I tell her that this is what he said, like, I should get in for a scope. And she goes, okay, but like, we suspect bowel endometriosis. I'm not going to send you for a scope until we further investigate that the bowel endometriosis.
Right.
So she sends me for like a special ultrasound, which came back clean. Then we put me back on. At that point, I don't think I was on my birth control because I just like, I hadn't been taking it regularly. And then I just like, again, like I mentioned before, I didn't like that I was just putting a Band-Aid on my symptoms. I wanted my symptoms to be at the forefront so that the medical like professionals would kind of take me seriously.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyways, so then she put me back on birth control. I bled for 27 days in the month of March.
Like consistently, like not just spotting, like
there was
bleeding.
So like after I think about 10 to 12 days, it kind of got to the point that it was more along the spotting thing, but it was like I would see bright red every single day. Whether it was dropping into the toilet, whether it was on my underwear, whether it was when I wiped, like, but I would see bright red every single day. And so again, that's abnormal because even when you're spotting, it's usually like more of like a brown color.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not this bright red. And typically like when they see bright red blood, they're like, okay, that's an active, like fresh bleed, right? Like that's pretty. So I go to the clinic and my GP wasn't like in, I think she was away this week. So they got me in with this other doctor. I had to ask to never, like, I was like, I don't ever want to see her again after I saw this one, because I tell her this, she gives me this medication to like stop the bleeding, which is great. Thank you. I needed to stop the bleeding. I'm telling her that, especially like, because I'm experiencing so much abdominal pain. And I think maybe it has to do with my diet, because I've never really done like elimination diets to see if like my abdominal symptoms are severely like altered by one food or another kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to do like the paleo AIP, which is no gluten, soy, dairy, no night, like it's really, really like restricted. And I tried doing that and I told her that. She cut me off mid-sentence, told me she didn't care and to just take my meds with crackers or something. I'm like,
you said she didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So rude. That's so rude.
Well, and that's exactly why, like, the next time I went in and like I couldn't see my GP, they were like, well, and I was like, no, I'll wait.
I'm
I
good.
don't want to see her again.
I'm good. That's
Yeah.
shocking. That is shocking.
Yeah. And so I was like, excuse me. So anyways, she also then referred me to a gynecologist and to a gastroenterologist for like a flexible sigmoidoscopy, which ended up being a full colonoscopy. When they got in there, they were like, "You're good? I'm just gonna go all the way up." I was like, "Sure."
Great, why not? Let's have a real party.
Right? Anyways, this gynecologist, when I finally saw him in June, told me that it wasn't abnormal to bleed for 27 days straight, told me to just get an IUD, sent me on my way. The GI specialist, and like, to be fair, like, he was just doing his job to the scope that he could, because we didn't ever meet. He never actually met me as a patient. He met me for the scope, and that was it. So he didn't know much of like my history of what I was doing as a patient, that kind of thing. So he did the scope, it was clean. And he told me to do an elimination diet. I was like, great, I've already been doing that. I was already doing that. It didn't, when I like re-added in the inflammatory foods, like the gluten and the dairy and the soy and stuff, like when I re-added in those foods, I actually felt better than I had when I was doing the elimination diet. Like, it didn't flare any of my symptoms. So I'm like,
yeah,
I think we can rule out that food we can rule out food playing a major part in my symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And so it was that. I had a kidney infection in June of 2019, which from that kidney infection flared like so much. So much. So yeah, June 16th, 2019, I had a kidney infection. Took antibiotics for it, but I actually started to feel worse. The pain in my like right flank like decreased and like the severity went away, but I started to experience other symptoms. My fatigue levels were worse. Like, my knees felt like they were the size of volleyballs. My muscles, especially the muscles in my legs, felt like they were on fire. And because I lift, everybody's like, well, Amadew, like, you lift all the time. Like, maybe it's just from your workout. And like, the fact that I'm a lifter and the fact that I lift as much as I do and have been lifting for as long as I have prior to complaining about this, to tell you that my muscle pain is abnormal. Because I'm used to post-workout soreness.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like.
Yeah, there's a definite difference.
Major difference.
Yeah.
And so then my GP, somebody that I knew had shown me another lifter that had like passed out during one of his lifts and ended up having rhabdomyolysis, which is a condition of abnormal muscle cell death.
That sounds
where basically it's like where your muscle cells start to die, and it's usually caused by like crush injuries, overworked. It's usually because you've had some other form of physical trauma to the muscles to cause this. And then because of the abnormal muscle cell death, it releases toxins into your blood that actually can cause damage and problems in your kidneys. I had just had a kidney infection, and I'm experiencing severe musculoskeletal pain. I'm a lifter, so I'm putting a lot of like strain and damage, like micro damage, onto my muscles. So I'm like, it's not like, and especially because this guy that I just saw that had it is a power lifter as well, right? So I'm like, maybe that's where we're at, right? So then I went to my GP and I was like, can we test my creatine kinase? And she's like, why? And I was like, rhabdomyolysis? And she's like, I really don't think it is. She goes, book in with me. We can chat about it. Within an hour, I had a call from her. She's like, I want you in the lab tomorrow. We're going to test you for autoimmune. So sent me to the lab. She also tested my creatine kinase at the same time because she's just amazing. I
love that you're properly listened to by her. You're like, this is what I want. So she's like, okay, I think it's this, but I'll do what you want as well. That's really good.
Yeah, where she was and like, she didn't completely just shut it down. She was like, I really don't think it is, but like, let's chat about it. She didn't completely just say, no, you're wrong. She was like, let's find, like, schedule a time and like we can sit down and talk about it. And I was like, okay, great. But then she ended up doing a test anyways. MACK, what, like my creatine kinase was elevated, but not rhabdo elevated. It was elevated to explain why I was experiencing like pretty intense musculoskeletal pain to the extent that I was, but it wasn't rhabdo. But then my autoimmune also came back positive. So then she was like, and she was honest with me. She's like, this is out of my scope now. It came back positive and I don't know enough about the ratios or the speckle patterns. So I'm referring you to a rheumatologist. So I saw a rheumatologist in August of 2019. And she was honest with me. She was looking and she's like, I'll be honest with you. I typically don't take people with like autoimmune, the ANA. She's like, I typically don't take them with levels as low as yours because it was a positive, but it was a low positive. Mm-hmm. And she's like, and I'm not seeing any indications of like soft tissue disorders. She's like, but your GP just made a really, really good point. Like she like made a really good case as to why she wanted me to see you. And so she like referred me for more blood work. We ruled out, we thought maybe reactive arthritis. Because when she saw me, she couldn't see anything, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't in, like, maybe I wasn't in a flare, right? So she sent me for further blood work. We ruled that out. So it's not reactive arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. I also don't have lupus, which is amazing. That was ruled out. And then she was asking me other questions, and she was asking me questions that like really got me thinking too. And then I started to identify that I feel better on the days that I work out. My pain levels are significantly reduced on the days that I train. And so I mentioned that to her, and that's not like characteristic of rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, like any of those other like rheumatological chronic conditions. That's not characteristic. Usually exertion worsens somebody with like a lot of these conditions. And then then I was back on Galliano, and there's this friend of mine that I like worked, because I served at like 3 to 4 different restaurants on Galliano. While I'm going through all of this in and out of emergency rooms and like testing and stuff. And yeah, I was working 3 to 4 serving jobs.
Naturally. That doesn't surprise me with what you currently do.
Like, are we really surprised? I'm working like, but one of the other girls that I worked with, she's quite older, like she's closer to my mom's age than she is mine. But she has a confirmed fibromyalgia diagnosis. And she had reached out to me and asked me to spend some time with her in the gym and see if we could find like a workout plan that worked for her, like with her like physical limitations. And at this point, like I have a bachelor's of human kinetics. I'm familiar with the term fibromyalgia and that it's characterized by musculoskeletal pain. I don't really understand much of the pathogenesis because I'd never really like done more reading on it than the little bit that we had learned about during like in school. And but because I know she has it and I want to do up a workout plan for her, I want to better understand where her limitations might lie, and if there's like documented research that shows that one form of exercise is more beneficial for fibro than another. So while I'm doing this research, I'm reading it and I'm checking off all of the boxes. I'm like, this is me. This is me. So I had like one more follow-up with my GP before because I was moving back to Kelowna, which is where I am now. And so I had one more follow-up with my GP on Galliano before I was moving. It was just to go over an adjustment in one of my medications. And she, but then at the end of it, I'm like, what are your thoughts on it being fibromyalgia? And her face just lit up. She's like, yeah, the rheumatologist definitely queried it on her report back to me. And so she had done like the postural orthostatic tachycardia test, and the numbers were high, like it pretty indicative that it's quite a possibility, but because I'm so trained, my heart rate isn't quite as reactive as most people with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. But POTS is commonly seen as fibro. And then she was doing all these other tests and like trying these other things that would kind of point towards whether or not it was. And then she's like, so she's agreeing with me. And I'm like, can I tell you how I got there? And she goes, yeah. And so we literally just spent like the rest of the appointment talking about why it's most likely fibro. And so like I haven't actually gone through any of like the neurological testing or like the confirmation to be like yes for like 1000%, but it's just kind of like it explains it all to me. My health practitioners, like GPs, my chiros, my massage therapist, my naturopath, like we're all kind of in agreement that it's the thing that fits the best right now. And especially the whole exercise being one of my best pain management strategies. Like that's not something that you see with like any other chronic condition that I've done reading on anyways. So that's kind of where I'm like, I'm fortunate that it's not chronic fatigue or like rheumatoid arthritis, because exercise actually helps. And I know that like when I wake up and I'm feeling like absolutely horrible, I know that moving is going to make that better.
I love that. I absolutely love that you have that like tried and tested positive mentality towards exercise being something that really, really genuinely helps you and manages you.